Genetics. A lot of people like this topic more than any other in the year, and it's actually one of my favorites. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things under the umbrella of genetics. We're going to start by discussing the discovery of the genes in the sense of the inheritable thing that gets passed on from generation to generation, and then we're going to go from there, and we're going to talk um, about chromosomes and how human traits are passed on from generation to generation. And then we're going to do some advanced genetics, and then we're going to do protein synthesis, DNA structure. We're going to be doing biotechnology, gene control and expression, central dogma, a lot of things under the umbrella of genetics. And it's definitely one of the most exciting parts of biology, and currently it's where most of the biology research is focusing in, because so much has been discovered in the field of zoology, of botany, and other fields already, that genetics is perhaps at the front end of biological research, and it's definitely involved in most aspects of current biological research. And so it's a very, very important topic. And so let's talk about that. What makes you who you are? What makes you different from other animals and other species? What makes you, in some ways, the same as them? There's a lot in which we are the same as bacteria or a frog. What makes you? What is this thing called chromosome and this thing called genes? How can that become who you are and what you see, and what process actually makes all of this possible, and how can this be traveling from generation to generation and evolving over time? All of these things are the topics that we talk about under the umbrella of genetics. And so let's start by talking about traits and what those things are. So when you think about traits, you think about characters, you think about things that make you who you are. And let's talk about some cool genetic traits. We're going to actually do an activity about this in class, but let's see some of them. So there are 46 chromosomes in a human, and this is what you see here in the top left is a pedigree that shows how a certain trait is passed on from one generation to the next. Eventually we'll talk about that. And let's see some of the traits which are easy to track across generations for humans, and it's basically made based on just a few genes. Now, the eyes are definitely not one of those, but you see here in the top right an example of a trait that is not an easy trait to track, such as the eye color, because eye color has lots and lots of genes involved in making your actual eye color, definitely more than 6 genes. And so you see that eye color varies all the way from a grayish to a dark brown, and so some people even look like they have black eyes. And so you see that this is a very great diversity, or a very great polymorphism of eye color in life. And so genetics is both what causes this diversity and what causes all to be the same. We all do have eyes. If we don't, it's considered a big anomaly that causes problems for us. And so it's what causes both things. All right. Now, what about these other traits? Having dimples versus not having dimples versus having just one, like me. I only have one dimple right there. And which is basically an area where the cells are not elastic enough. They're not growing, or they're not have the feature of growing enough. So it's basically a birthmark you're born with. Whether it's a face dimple or a back dimple or anything else in your body, it's considered a mark that you're born with. And you believe some people even get surgery to get them because they think it's interesting. Forget it. It's crazy. Being right-handed versus being left-handed. Which one are you? Or are you ambidextrous? Can you do it both ways? It doesn't write with both your hands. When you stand your thumb up, does it face backwards like mine does, or does it face up? Do you have the hitchhiker's thumb? Yes or not? Your earlobes. Check it out. Are they attached to your face, or are they hanging from your face? You can see the difference in the picture there. Do you have a hairline that is straight, or do you have widow's peak, which is like a V little indentation right in front of your forehead, like Keanu Reeves has there? See? Are you a male or a female? That is a very, very discrete feature. You know, are you either one or the other? Now remember, the majority of human features are more like eye color. You know, there's several options, but some of them are discrete, like we're just one or the other. Now here's one that is a little bit in between. Are you capable of rolling your tongue in these ways? Can you do that? That's the only one I can do. I can't even do any of the other ones. But all of these things are genetic. It's you're born with the capacity to do that. It's not something you can learn to do, you know? And so, all right. Now, what about skin color or hair color or eye color? We talked about those. Those are all discrete traits, and there's a lot of variation all the way from dark black to really white skin, all the way from really black hair to really whitish hair to even red hair. And so there's a lot of different types of human hair, human eye color, and so forth. These are called polymorphic traits, or traits which are determined by many, many genes. All right, not like the traits we saw in the previous one. Let's see some more. Again, you see here the dimples that we talked about before. And you see several famous actors that have dimples. And a lot of people think dimples are charming. I happen to have one, so I'm biased. You see the earlobe and the tongue rolling that we talked about. All right. Now here's some other one cool ones. I bet you didn't realize about this. Can you fold your arms like this? All right. All right. Now, do you have your right arm in front of your left arm, or do you have it the other way around? Well, most people put their right arm over their left arm. If you're opposite, you're probably recessive. It's not what most people are like. It doesn't mean anything, but check it out. Try to invert and fold your arms the other way. Doesn't it feel odd? Like I don't even know how to. Just because my entire life I folded the arms one way, and that is genetic. Do the same thing with your thumbs. Get both your hands, cross your fingers like this, and then put your thumb like that over the top. Did you put the right thumb on top of the left thumb, or the left thumb on top of the right thumb? Switch them around. Feel the difference. You probably never realized, but your entire life you do it one way. And that's because having the capacity to actually do this is a genetic trait. We talked about the hitchhiker's thumb already. Do you have hair or not on your middle finger? Look at your middle finger, right in the middle of your hand, and see if you have hair there. If you don't have hair there, it's a recessive trait. Most people do have hair there. Is your toe longer, your second toe longer than your first toe, or the other way around? That is also a genetic trait. Are you left-handed or are you right-handed? Can you do this? You know, the Vulcan V with your hands. Notice that I have a little bit of trouble doing it, but I can't. But on my other hand, forget it. I can't do it at all. The way that Spock's doing there on the bottom. Can you look? Bet your pinky finger. Look at my pinky finger. You see how it's straight when I put it up? But some people actually have a little curve on their pinky finger. You know, they're like crooked. Some people have the capacity of bending their fingers forward. Just the tip of the finger, they can do this. I can't do it. All of that is a genetic trait. So what about things like human behavior? Are those things genetic? Is who you are genetic? Well, there's a lot of conflict about that, but if you think about it, several fields of science have tried to answer that question, from game theory to psychology to sociology to anthropology and so forth. A lot of people have tried to study over the time whether or not behavior is genetic. And as we try to understand the key to the mind, we are learning that although a lot of our behavior is learned, a lot of it is also genetic. For example, we all recognize these features as joy or bliss, as sorrow on her eyes that she's crying. Over here we have anger or frustration, and then we have an expression of affection or love or care. We have an expression of indignation or anger on the top left with the girl and the kid. And we can all understand the basic features of the way the eyes and mouth move, and this is pretty much universal. And we can understand these basic emotions of fury, anger, sorrow, disgust, horror, surprise, and so forth. And for all of humanity, it's pretty much the same. And as you can see, Even as babies, if you frown for a baby, he eventually might cry, because we understand. We have this basic understanding of these facial features, and so genetics is definitely important, even when it comes down to human behavior. And that's just an example of simple emotions. But even more complex emotions could be theoretically considered genetics, and perhaps even the way we think is sometimes genetic. There's studies that indicate that there are some traits some thought patterns which seem to be genetic, because a lot of us share common thoughts or share common expressions or something like that is not necessarily learned, because it's the same across many generations and cultures and so forth. And so psychology is also trying to understand that. You see here another kind of trait, flower color, or traits that make cats different, and you see all the different variations of that. This is, again, another example of what they call a polymorphic trait, or a trait that has many different versions instead of the discrete traits that we were talking about before. Now that we've talked about some of these traits and characters, let's clarify what this whole thing means. So heredity, which is the first thing we're going to do when we talk about genetics, is the study of how these character or traits that we just mentioned are passed on from generation to generation. Why do you have it and someone else doesn't? Basically, that's what heredity is trying to answer. And the first person to really try to answer that was Mendel. And basically, what he focused on is studying how traits are passed on from generation to generation. And he also talked about things like character versus trait. Now, I want to make this clear. What is a character? A character is a specific feature of your body. So, for example, the things we talked about, having hitchhiker's thumb versus not, that's a character. Or being able or not able to roll your tongue, that's a character. The way the cat looks, the color pattern of the cat, that's a character. The color of a flower, that's a character. The shape of a flower can also be a character. And so what's a trait? A trait is a specific example or type of character. So, for example, cat A has a coloration. Cat B is a more tiger-like coloration. D has a tiger-like coloration. And you see the trait here, it will be the different actual color of the different colors of plant. And so the character is what you're looking at or what you're studying, and the trait is the specific example of that. And so my hair is a character. Having hair versus not having hair is a specific type of that character. All right. So eye color is the character. Brown eye color is the trait. You understand? So you should practice that and see if you understand the difference between the character and the trait. All right. And we'll take it from here in the next video, where we're actually going to talk about Mendel and everything that he brought to us.